Back to the textbook, Crossing the Borders, Malayalam Literature and English Translations. Today we will discuss the question and answers from the chapter The Enchantress of Fried Fish, written by Paul Zacharia. When I open the textbook at page number 186, you can see the chapter The Enchantress of Fried Fish. And when you turn the pages and take page number 194, you can see the comprehension questions, 12 comprehension questions, then 8 paragraph questions and 4 essay questions. So you can understand that there are so many questions from this chapter. So what I'm going to do is, as usual, I will be including almost all the possible paragraph questions within the essay itself. But 2 paragraph questions will be discussed after we discuss the essay questions. നമുക്കറിയാമല്ലോ പോൾ സക്കറിയയുടെ ദ എൻചാൻട്രസ് ഓഫ് ഫ്രൈഡ് ഫിഷ് എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് ഒരു ട്രാവലോഗ് ആണ് അല്ലെ, ഒരു യാത്രാ വിവരണ പരമായിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു വർക്കാണ്. സോ അദ്ദേഹവും അല്ലെ തൻ്റെ ഫ്രണ്ട്സും കൂടി സൗത്ത് ആഫ്രിക്കൻ ആ ഒരു ഏരിയയിൽ അല്ലെ നടത്തിയ ഒരു ട്രാവൽ, അതാണ് ഇവിടെ പറയുന്നത്. സോ ടൈറ്റിൽ അല്ലെ ഉദ്ദേശിക്കുന്നത് ഈ പൊരിച്ച മീനിന്റെ മന്ത്രവാദിനി എന്ന് ഉദ്ദേശിക്കുന്നത് അദ്ദേഹവും അല്ലെ ഫ്രണ്ട്സും കൂടി ഒരു ഹോട്ടലിൽ അല്ലെ കയറിയപ്പോൾ എന്താണ് അവിടെ അല്ലെ എന്താണ് ലൈവ് ഫിഷ് ഉണ്ട്, ജീവനുള്ള മത്സ്യമുള്ള ഒരു ടാങ്ക്. സോ അതിന്റെ അടുത്തായിട്ടൊരു സുന്ദരിയായ സ്ത്രീ നിന്നിട്ടുണ്ടാവും. അല്ലെ അവരെന്ത് ചെയ്യും, നിങ്ങൾ പറഞ്ഞാൽ അല്ലെ ഫിഷിന് ആവശ്യമുള്ള ഏത് ഫിഷാണോ അതിനെ വലയിട്ട് പിടിച്ച് അല്ലെ എന്ത് ചെയ്യും, അവർക്ക് പീസാക്കിയിട്ട് കൊടുക്കും. സോ അതാണ് ഈ ടൈറ്റിൽ കൊണ്ട് നമ്മൾ ഉദ്ദേശിക്കുന്നത് അല്ലെ, എൻചാൻട്രസ് ഓഫ് ഫ്രൈഡ് ഫിഷ്. So if you have not gone through the video I have uploaded about the chapter, so you just visit my playlist. The lecture is available there. Now let's start our comprehension questions. The first one, who are the 3 friends accompanying the writer in his journey through South Africa? Answer. Paul Zacharia and his 3 friends once visited South Africa. These 3 friends were Unni, Thomas Matthew and Cherian. Now moving on to the second question. What, according to the author, is the reason for the absence of a traffic culture among Keralites? Answer. Paul Zacharia says that the aristocrats in Kerala consider themselves to be the privileged to enjoy the rights to use public roads. He says that this is the main reason for the absence of a traffic culture among Keralites. Now the third question. Why does the author feel a covert sense of admiration towards the white man? Answer. Paul Zacharia feels a covert sense of admiration towards the white man. This is because of the tactful psychological mode of governance filled with a communal venom, and also because of the sense of beauty and efficiency displayed in the details of public works. Now we will move on to the fourth question. What is the historic blunder that the whites have committed according to Paul Zacharia? Answer. Paul Zacharia says that the whites have committed a historical blunder by deciding that in the dreamland the whites build for themselves, the blacks will have no place. So the blacks have been excluded from the administrative and social projects for centuries in that area. Now the fifth question. What is apartheid? Answer. Apartheid is a system of legislation that enforced racial segregation in South Africa. The law of apartheid came into being with the South African election in 1948. Now the sixth question. What does one feel while journeying through the vast African roads? Answer. Paul Zacharia says that while journeying through the vast African roads, one feels that one is heading towards the end of the world. Everywhere, low hillocks spread like motionless waves. Now the seventh question. Why do the roadside gardens appear withered and messy? Answer. The roadside gardens appear withered and messy because the white domination had ended with the law of apartheid in 1948. But in times of apartheid, those gardens have been well looked after like a courtyard garden. Now the eighth question. What is Shepstone famous for? Answer. Shepstone in Africa is a place famous for beautiful beaches. It is a city teeming with beach-loving tourists. Now the ninth question. Why are the African beaches often dangerous for the tourist? Answer. The African beaches are often dangerous for the tourists from Europe. This is because of the unusually high ultraviolet content from the sun, which might even cause cancer. Now moving on to the 10th question. Why the pretty woman in the restaurant is called an enchantress? Answer. The pretty woman in the restaurant is called an enchantress because, like an enchantress, she grabs a big shining knife to chop off the fish. She cleans the fish and chops it into pieces for the author and his friends. Now the 11th question. Why did the white men inflict violence on the Africans? Answer. The white men inflict violence on Africans in order to make them work on the plantations. The blacks were treated like herds of cattle during slave trade. Now coming to the last question, that is the 12th one. Amongst whom did Gandhiji begin his social work? Answer. Gandhi first volunteered his services in social work for the coolies working in the African plantation in Natal. Among these Indians, there were Gaundas, Naidus, Varkis, etc. Now we will come to the next section, that is essay questions. So there are 4 essay questions. Let's read those. First one. How does Zacharia succeed in exploring the colonial history of South Africa? The second question. Travel writing evokes in the minds of the readers the culture, history, and the topography of alien lands and civilizations. Discuss. The third question. How does the author bring to light the sufferings of the African laborers in South Africa during the colonial period? The fourth question. The heinous brutality that took place after bringing them to the plantations in the Americas is one of the most shameful and sinful events in the history of Western culture, Christianity, and mankind. Comment. Now you see, as I usually do, I have included 6 paragraph questions within the essay itself. So note the idea. The second paragraph of the essay is the answer of paragraph question number 1 and 8 from the textbook. The third paragraph of the essay is the answer of paragraph question number 2 and 3 from the textbook. The fourth paragraph of the essay is the answer of paragraph question number 5 and 6 from the textbook. Now let's begin with the introduction paragraph of the essay. The first paragraph. The earth is a wellspring of amazing places and fascinating cultures. Traveling is the best way that one can educate oneself about the ways of the world. Travel writing or travelogue is an old canon of literature dealing with nature writing, adventure writing, exploration writing, etc. Travel writing typically records the experiences of travelers in some interesting places and circumstances. It will include vivid descriptions, illustrations, historical background, etc. The Enchantress of Fried Fish is a part of Paul Zacharias, who was born in 1945, travelogue, An African Journey, that was published in 2005. In this chapter, the narrator explores the past and the present of Africa. So as I said, the second paragraph of the essay is the answer of also paragraph question number 1 and 8 from the textbook. Now let's read paragraph question number 1 from the textbook. How does the author portray the beauty of the African landscape? Now paragraph question number 8. Identify the features of a travelogue citing instances from the text. Answer. The Rainbow Nation, a world in one country, that is what South Africa is. In Paul Zacharias' travelogue on South Africa, he describes the unique beauty of the African landscape. The beauty of South Africa is breathed through the mosaic of cultures and cuisines and the complex history that has shaped it. But most of all, it is the natural splendor of this country that sets it apart. The South African landscapes are made up of beautiful valleys, mountains, forests, deserts, coastline, and grassy savannas that are breathtaking in the picturesque scale. Paul Zacharia describes the plains of South Africa, which are abundant with cornfields, crops, and orchards. Ornamental plants and flowers plentifully grow on the concrete ridge that divides the highway into two. Low hillocks spread like motionless waves. The distant stretch of horizons was constantly in view as the author and his friends drove along. Paul Zacharia says that while journeying through the vast African roads, one feels that one is heading towards the end of the world. The writer then describes the splendid bright sun over South African soil. Sharpston in South Africa is a place famous for beautiful beaches. It is a city teeming with beach-loving tourists. The writer also describes the sugarcane plantations all along the field. It is not surprising that South Africa is home to a collection of the most abundant and diverse game reserves on earth. This country truly is a masterpiece, the perfect portrayal of the magic that is the African continent. All in all, South African landscapes provide us with the lush greens of the jungle, the dry grasses of the savanna, the majesty of the mountains. So paragraph question ആണെങ്കിൽ നിങ്ങൾ എന്ത് ചെയ്യുക? ഇതിന്റെ കൂടെ ചാപ്റ്റർ വായിച്ചിട്ടുള്ള എക്സ്പീരിയൻസും കൂടി എഴുതുക. അല്ലെങ്കിൽ താഴെയുള്ള ഏതെങ്കിലും പാരഗ്രാഫ് നോക്കി എന്ത് ചെയ്യുക? കുറച്ച് കൂട്ടിച്ചേർത്ത് എഴുതി പാരഗ്രാഫ് കുറച്ചധികം എഴുതുക. Now we will move on to the third paragraph of the essay. As I said, the third paragraph of the essay is the answer of paragraph question number 2 and 3 from the textbook. Now let's read those questions. Paragraph question number 2, that is, the history of apartheid as revealed through the story. Paragraph question number 3, what happened when the cities built by the whites came in the hands of the blacks? Answer: racial discrimination brings the most serious threat to mankind. Apartheid is a system of legislation that enforced racial segregation in South Africa. The law of apartheid came into being with the South African election in 1948. In Paul Zacharia's travelogue on Africa, he describes the history of apartheid in South Africa. Apartness or apartheid is the political policy of racial segregation. Not only did apartheid separate whites from non-whites, it also segregated the blacks, that is the Africans, from the colored, that is the Indians or the Asians. Apartheid also prevented blacks from living in white areas. Paul Zacharia feels a covert sense of admiration towards the white man. This is because of the tactful psychological mode of governance filled with communal venom, and also because of the sense of beauty and efficiency displayed in the details of public works. He says that the whites have committed a historical blunder by deciding that in the dreamland the whites built for themselves, the blacks will have no place. So, the blacks have been excluded from the administrative and social projects for centuries in that area. Because of this fact, the blacks find it difficult to get to grips with the dimensions, boundaries, and the complexities of the land. The writer says, that paradise, which was once inaccessible but now owned by them, is allowed to degenerate miserably, or else black dictators take possession of the land. According to Zacharia, it is the brutal remnant of the history constructed by the whites. The roadside gardens appear withered and messy because the white domination had ended with the law of apartheid in 1948. But in times of apartheid, those gardens had been well looked after like a courtyard garden. Now we will move on to the fourth paragraph of the essay. The fourth paragraph of the essay is the answer of paragraph question number 5 and 6 from the textbook. Now the paragraph question number 5 is, what was the real reason behind the demand of Indian laborers to South Africa. Now paragraph question number 6. Gandhiji's role in the history of South Africa as illustrated in the story. Answer. Before leading the Indian freedom movement, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi used to live in South Africa to fight against injustice and class division. In Paul Zacharia's travelogue, he describes the efforts Gandhi has taken for the Indian laborers in South Africa. Within 10 years, Gandhi propagated the philosophy of Satyagraha in South Africa and propelled the country towards a no class or ethnic discrimination society. Gandhi arrived in Durban around 1893. In no time, Gandhi became the leader of the South African Indian community. From 1893 to 1914, Gandhi worked as an attorney and a public worker. When Gandhi landed in Durban in 1893, British Indians had been immigrating to South Africa for more than 30 years. The Indians had settled in Natal and had received favors from the Zulu tribe. But the Zulus refused to work in the plantations. Therefore, they requested the government of India to provide laborers. During the period of Dutch rule, that was from 1652 to 1795, Indian slaves had been brought to the Cape in significant numbers. But by the mid-19th century, they had melted into the colored population of that colony. A new wave of migration had started when a first batch of laborers were sent from British India to Natal in 1860 to work in the sugarcane plantations as an alternative to African laborers. The white men inflict violence on Africans in order to make them work on the plantations. The blacks were treated like herds of cattle during slave trade. Gandhi first volunteered his services in social work for the coolies working in the African plantation in Natal. Among these Indians, there were Gaudas, Naidus, Wakis, etc. Some 16,000 people were arriving every year from Calcutta and Madras to work in the sugarcane plantations with 5-year contracts, at the expiration of which they could either re-enlist or seek return to India. Now we will move on to the concluding paragraph of the essay, the last paragraph of the essay. Traveling offers an opportunity for adventure. It satisfies one's sense of beauty and gives one a feeling of power over the things around him. It also helps one to see someone else's point of view. It opens up many new worlds to the traveler. Reading Paul Zacharia's travelogue, one feels the same experience. He blends the past and the present conditions of South Africa with the inquisitive mind of a historian, an aesthetician, and a lover of nature. Thus we have finished the essay question. Now it's time to move to the next topic, that is the remaining paragraph questions. So the next paragraph question is paragraph question number 4, that is, comment on the title of the chapter The Enchantress of Fried Fish. Explain the context. Answer. A beautifully put title captures the reader's attention at the very outset. This is what Paul Zacharia does through the title of the chapter, The Enchantress of Fried Fish, which is taken from his travelogue, An African Journey, published in 2005. The chapter is titled Poricha Meeninte Mandravadini in Malayalam. The title is taken from the context where the writer Paul Zacharia narrates one incident happened in Shepstone, Africa. Here the writer describes the experience of having the lunch at a restaurant. They had an option to choose a live fish from the tank as the side dish in the lunch. A gorgeous young white lady was the custodian of the large fish tank. The writer had his 3 friends with him, Cherian, Unni, and Thomas Matthew. These 3 men chose a fish which was known for its taste. The pretty woman in the restaurant is called the Enchantress because, like an enchantress, she grabs a big shining knife to chop off the fish. She cleans the fish very well and chops it into pieces for the author and his friends. She handles it to them once her work got over. They passed the item to the grilling department settled outside the shop and waited for it to get ready. Meanwhile, they seated with their beer. In a short while, the fish got fried and appeared before them. They relished it unhurriedly. The writer describes the fried fish as a work of art done by the enchantress' gloved hands. The writer says that the Africans seems to show an aversion for anything that tasted spicy. They had to order to flavor the food with an extra pinch of spice. Now the next paragraph question, that is the paragraph question number 7 from the textbook, that is, how does Paul Zacharia describe the sugar factory on fire? Answer. Africa is characterized by abundant natural resources. The moderately high temperature, fertile soil, and water resources for the growing of sugar cane, which is the main raw material in the sugar industry. In the chapter, The Enchantress of Fried Fish, Paul Zacharia describes the experience of witnessing a sugar factory on fire when he and his friends visited South Africa. The chapter is taken from his travelogue, An African Journey, published in 2005. The incident occurred near the outskirts of Durban city, where most of the sugar factories are located. They see the road wound from the savannah through hillocks and valleys. Then they saw a haze that appeared rising high up the sky. It was at first afar, but then it reached near them. The gigantic spiral pillar of the thick black smoke seemed to touch the sky. A unit of a huge sugar factory has caught fire. It was the smoke from this fire that appeared near them. Fire rescue engines were rushing in as they passed by the factory. They saw the tip of the huge pillar of smoke flailing and spiraling in the wind. It erected a jet black, congested, and a colossal tower of smoke. This smoke eclipsed the fire below. If it had engulfed them even for a moment, they couldn't have survived for sure. They glanced at it in horror and left the place in a hurry. Paul Zacharia describes the incident with such a detail that while reading it, we feel as if we view the incident before our eyes. He takes keen notice of the details of the huge smoke pillars and arouses the reader's curiosity. His eyes never miss a slight thing around him, and this really adds the desired amount of reliability to his travelogues. A keen traveler, Zacharia has published travelogues on Africa, England, Saudi Arabia, and China, as well as the Kumbh Mela. Thus, we have finished the discussion of the question and answers. So in the next class, we will meet again with some other chapters from the same textbook. Thank you so much.